joking that it's going to be Stardew, Final Fantasy Stardew.
It is time once again for the main story quest, where the Trinity Bros give you their MMO opinion.
All right, that is right. That means we're into the main story quest, where it's time for us to give you our MMO opinions. And because we have Lurkor here, we have the ultimate in quest. That's right. Yesterday, Friday, at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, they did the Final Fantasy XIV announcement showcase, and they went and showed off the new expansion called Endwalker. Okay, naturally, got a bunch of the Final Fantasy people really excited and happy. What I thought was most interesting is you always love the Yoshi P conferences. He always makes fun of it. There's also, like Lurkor pointed out to me, hidden meanings in the t-shirts he's always wearing. But what I thought most interesting is, and we'll talk more about this, right, was the fact that they said this is the end of the Hydaelyn Zodiac storyline. That while when Shadowbringers came out 5.0, it wasn't the end. It wasn't really into 5.3. I know that they mentioned 5.4 is coming out. But when 6.0 comes out with the new expansion, it's going to be over. And then from that point on, it's all new. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting. They showed off one job called the Sage. But anyways, I'm going to let Lurkor just drool all over this because he loved Final Fantasy XIV. I'm not a hater, even though he calls me a hater. You know, it's just not mine to say my cup of tea as an MMO. I do give kudos and props to Square Enix for always doing good stuff. Their game after it crashed and burned at the very beginning, you know, A Realm Reborn was a lot better because after all, they were very arrogant back then saying, you don't need to jump. I was like, oh, whatever, okay. You don't know how to play games, do you, right? So anyways, got a lot of better. Anyways, Lurkor, take it away. Let us know what you think and what I missed in my brief description.
Yeah, so like Kennethan said, and Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker is being released. It's going to be released in fall of this year, which came out to a surprise for all of us. Just because we know that they've been hit by COVID and, you know, all that stuff. So they said that, you know, they had to cut some corners, but even then they're still gonna release it this year. Me and my friends weren't actually thinking it was going to be this year, but we're obviously extremely happy. The level cap's being raised to 90, 80 before, so just going up by 10. But with this, they're actually going to do a stat squish. World of Warcraft,
really?
World of Warcraft has been known to do stat squishes quite a bit, right? I think we've done 3 or so, maybe.
3 sounds all right.
Yeah.
So you're saying stat squish, not level squish.
Yeah, stat squish.
Okay.
So Yoshi P actually spent a lot of time explaining why they were going to do a stat squish, mainly stating that it was going to be like from a programming side, you know, to avoid bugs, and they've been able to do hot fixes around them, but they were just letting everyone know that, you know, you're still going to get your power gains, but they're just not going to be as much, just so that they can expand into the future. Yeah, and like Ken mentioned, there's going to be a whole new story, obviously, and this is going to be the end of the A Realm Reborn arc. So for the past 10 years, they've kind of been building up the battle between Zodiac and Hydaelyn, and you know, as you go through the game, I mean, the story started off kind of meh in the original expansion. Like in A Realm Reborn, but you know, it's gotten better and better over time, and you know, this conclusion is going to be really epic. And like you said, it's going to end right at 6.0. Normally for an expansion's lifespan, the story kind of has like a climax at like in the like 2.0 3.0 sort of thing, but the final expansion's like plot points kind of end in the 0.3 patch, and so we're gonna see the end of it in 6.0, which is gonna be really cool. Right now, the new job. So the new job is gonna be a healer. It's called the Sage. They use like these really cool like floating aether devices to do their attacks and healing, and they took a very interesting approach to this. So if you've been playing Final Fantasy XIV, they have 3 healers currently, and that's the White Mage, the Scholar, and the Astrologian. And they've been trying to do a balance of these 3 healers. First, you have the White Mage, which is known as like a pure healer in the sense where your heals are meaty, you like have great reactions and stuff. But the Scholar was more of a like a damage prevention sort of thing where you went like shields and barriers. And so and Astrologian was like a mix between the two. They tried to with like a lot of utility, and for balancing purposes they never really got it quite right. So what they mentioned in this one is that as far as healing goes, they were going to just to separate the healers into 2 different categories, and that was barrier healers and like pure healers. Okay, so
makes sense.
Super interested to see like where they go as far as like balancing that goes. They've done a really good job of balancing in the game in general, as far as like because it's very PvE focused. Obviously, there isn't much PvP in Final Fantasy XIV, so I think they've been able to hit some really good some good like balance between all the classes, but things have gotten a little bit out of hand. So
well, now I know you tend to play healers, okay? Which is your favorite healer?
I play class? White Mage normally.
White Mage?
Yeah. Just having big heals and like a reactive playstyle has fit me personally, but there's a lot of like the other 2 healers are very cool, and if you haven't tried any of them, then you should. They're great.
So what you're saying, so how do you think the Sage is going to hold up to the other 3 that you've played before?
I honestly think that they're gonna that we're gonna see a lot of different changes as far as the healers go. I don't expect Scholar and Astrologian to come out this being the same class that they are right now, because of like the shift in how they want to like separate the 2 healers. Obviously, this is pure speculation. I have no information on that, but I expect White Mage will probably stay pretty similar. I think that they're pretty happy with where it is, but the 2 other healers are going to go through some radical changes to kind of fit both those roles that they want to do. They said that they're going to announce the second job at a later date, but he said that they were going to give us the role for it, and it's going to be melee DPS. They ran into a lot of controversy back when they announced Dancer, because they didn't announce what role it was going to be, and a lot of people thought it was going to be a healer, and so they got some flack from flack from the community that it wasn't a healer, and so they wanted to nip that in the bud this time. You can really kind of see like that the team kind of has like their ears open to like community feedback and stuff with this.
They've been credited for that a lot. Now, people have been talking about Necromancer, and they gave a lot of hints during the stream. You know, do you think that is their hint, it's going to be a Necromancer, or you think that it's going to be something else still?
Well, so Yoshi P's always been known to wear different t-shirts that give away hints to what the next class is going to be. They've been pretty spot on sometimes, but he wore a Spider-Man t-shirt one time, and the Spider-Man film that had been directed was by Sam Raimi, and the class was Samurai. So like the hints could be anywhere, like from like right on the nose to something incredibly obscure. So we're all just guessing right now. There's been, when you were fighting, there's been a couple of bosses. One of them's been a berserker and one of them's been a necromancer. So people were thinking like maybe we would go one of those 2 routes. But if it's going to be melee deep, people were thinking that if it was necromancer, it'd be some sort of caster. But if we're going melee, he wore a Sex Pistols documentary t-shirt which had like a Grim Reaper on it, and then his second t-shirt that he wore in a later live letter was a Children of Bodom, so like death metal sort of feel to it. So we're all kind of at a loss as to where it's going to go, but we're thinking maybe some sort of dark like dark based melee, like a Reaper or something like that. Maybe even a melee Necromancer. That could be cool.
We should put SirJahzeal on the mission. He's a expert in the music area, so we should check out those 2 T-shirts and see if he can find the actual hidden meanings that Yoshi P was putting there.
Oh, I can do it.
All right, I'll send you the 2 T-shirts. All right, okay.
Okay.
We have our expert on the case.
Well, you know what's funny is I never really watched an event before from the, Final Fantasy 14 and watching this, and it's like, yeah, they go backstage. They show he showed the clip from the stage. He comes back wearing a different shirt. Like, I noticed that, and then his friend and his interpreter was like, you change shirts? It's like, yeah, I was getting too hot. Like, you want to talk about this? He goes, no. It was like, it's like, and it's like later on, it's like, he's like, yeah, 10 years, but 10 years, and I'm not going away. Okay, I'll be doing Final Fantasy 14 until I die. Probably after I'm dead too. And then the guy was like, oh, what, you're going to be doing it from the grave? Oh, like a necromancer. And it's just like...
they do love to pull their community around for sure. It's really great. But yeah, so there's going to be new areas. We're going to be able to visit Reset-Han and Thavnair, which are 2 things that we've seen in like gear and kind of know about, but we never actually got to see. We're also going to go to Garlemald, which is been one of the big antagonists, but if you've been following the story, they're currently in a civil war, and what they showed was just kind of a post-apocalyptic wasteland of just war-torn place. So pretty excited to go visit what's over there. And lastly, they said that we're going to go to the moon.
Yeah, so, now I wanted to, you saw the trailer. I saw the trailer, okay, and I'm like, wait a minute, the moon.
Elon Musk is taking us to the moon.
Now, how does the moon fit into the lore of Final Fantasy 14? And why was this why are we going to the moon anyways? This guy was standing on the moon without a space suit. So I'm like,
Yeah, so we've seen interactions between NPCs in cutscenes on the moon before. It's kind of because we have these kind of larger than life enemies that we've been fighting called the Ashians. And so we know that they have some sort of connection to the moon. As far as how we're going to get there, there's only speculation. And I don't think Elon Musk is going to send us all to the moon via Final Fantasy 14. So yeah, but Final Fantasy 14 is not the first Final Fantasy game to go to the moon. Final Fantasy 4 also sent characters to the moon. So so yeah, that should be very interesting. As always, there's going to be a new Alliance raid, which is a 24-person raid. There's going to be a new high-end raid, which is going to be an 8-person raid. Those are the 2 those are like the heroic mythic versions of the that sort of thing. There's going to be new dungeons. There's going to be new primals, which are like one-shot bosses. They said that one of them is going to be Anima, which is from Final Fantasy X, one of the of the big aeons from Final Fantasy X. Yeah. If you remember the NPC, the guy Seymour Guado, it was his Anima. He summoned it, and it was incredibly powerful. And one of the little anecdotes that they told was that the guy that designed Anima for Final Fantasy X actually works on the art team for Final Fantasy 14, and he did another design for it, which is really cool. So super excited.
For those who don't know, Final Fantasy X is the only one that I actually played the entire game, but didn't quite down the final boss. I had help with it, but played the entire game. So the other Final Fantasies I've not played fully. We dabbled a little bit in Final Fantasy 11, didn't go very far. 14 I played a bunch with, obviously not as much as Lurkor. And then I've not played 15, but yeah, it was interesting that Final Fantasy 10. They mentioned a new area called Island Sanctuary. What is that?
So we don't know what that's actually going to be, but some people have been joking that it's going to be Stardew, Final Fantasy Stardew, or something like that. They mentioned being able to raise animals, let your little mini pets or minions run around.
It's like Pandaria,
and it looked like
WoW.
Yeah, it looked like they were going to be growing crops. Maybe you've been able to grow crops in the game already.
Okay.
So a lot of people are excited for that, actually.
And I also noticed they say you now can have Ishgard housing.
Correct. So Final Fantasy XIV has housing, and there is 4 wards currently, or 4 different places that you can buy, based around the main cities. And the main city that you haven't been able to purchase housing with is Ishgard, and there's been a large scale crafting event that has been going on this entire expansion, where it's called the Restoration of Ishgard, because Ishgard is a city that has been ravaged by thousands of years of war between humans and dragons, and so you as a crafter were helping rebuild it, and you could see, and you built it up, and now they are finally going to enable people to buy houses there. So that's exciting.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the last things that I'll mention is for Final Fantasy XIV is being released on the PS5. It's going into beta on April 13th. And if you own Final Fantasy XIV for the PS4, then you can upgrade to the PS5 for free. So that's cool.
That is cool. All right. So, SirJahzeal, you got any questions or anything you want to know about Final Fantasy XIV from Lurkor while he's here?
Really?
Just give you a shot, you know, if you wanted to ask.
I had to look it up because now this is going way back.
Yeah.
But I remember a former roommate of mine, and I used to play Tactics a lot, Final Fantasy Tactics,
Mhm.
and I thought I remembered the Sage being one of the jobs that you could have in that game, but I just looked it up and it doesn't list it. So
I think
I'm
I want to say my friends were talking about the Sage being part of Tactics Advance or something, and it was like,
advanced. Okay, there you go.
yeah, and it was, I think they said it was like either like someone that does like large, like wide, like large, like full area like spells, or
Right.
it was like a mix between white and black mages. I didn't play it personally.
Yeah, I mostly watched my roommate play it. I did play quite a bit of it, but I was more at that point in time. I was a little bit more into shooters, believe it or not. So,
Yes,
yeah,
that's Final Fantasy Tactics Advance.
yeah,
or
it must have been
Sage.
advanced then. Okay, and I was remembering correctly. I just looked up the wrong game.
Yeah,
Yeah, but Final Fantasy VII was my favorite, though. I love that storyline, and the remake was just awesome. But
I still need
I
to
don't
play that.
know, with this coming out and kind of entering a new era, so to speak, it almost makes me want to try
know.
it again. But it's like every time I try it, I'm like really excited and happy and enjoying it for the first couple days, and then it just diminishes immediately after that. And I think part of it is not playing with other people. Possibly that has a lot to do with it. Is you know, you do enjoy MMOs. They're made to play with other people, and I think every time that I have tried to play it, it's been, you know, just me, myself, and I, which you know, that can be fun for a little bit, but you can only, well, I would say you can only talk to yourself for so long, but I can actually do it for pretty remarkably long.
Well, me too, because we're streamers, okay? So yeah,
Right.
you know what's interesting about that is that I agree with you. That's all usually why I play MMOs, and I know that I'm always behind the curve in my free company, you know, that I'm with, and they're always ahead of me than I am, and I'm like, okay, well, you know, and I get that. And that's the thing is, one thing always bothers me about Final Fantasy XIV is the fact that you have to do group quests, group dungeons, right, to advance the storyline. You cannot do it solo. You have to join a team. And so, you know, Heaven's Word was the one I got. Okay, I did not get the second one. After that, I also did not get Shadowbringers. And so this one comes in. You have to go through those story arcs before you can do Endwalker. That's always going to be the closing point for new people sometimes.
Final Fantasy XIV has one of the highest barriers of entry to get to the end game, I would say. if not out of all the MMOs that I've played, where because everything is tied to that main story quest, you can feel really bogged down, especially in the story quests that aren't actually that well written. The writing has gotten way better over time, and starting with A Realm Reborn, A Realm Reborn's writing is not that great, and the voice acting is also not that great. But and they made better and better strides. But when they have you play through each of the expansions patches as well. So it's once you hit level 50, you're not going straight to the next expansion. You hit level 50, and then you need to see the progression of like who the Scions are, like who these other people are. You have to follow these main story quests, and when they're not really well written, it can really bog down you trying to catch up with your friends. So that's why I say like Final Fantasy 14 has always had like the highest barrier of entry in that regard. You can buy story skips, but at that point you're missing out on so much that you're like, why do I care about these people? That sort of thing.
I mean, Final Fantasy 14 is a good game. Don't be wrong, okay? I mean, I obviously, when I talk about the fact that there's so many different games out there, I like that there's a different variety for people who want to play. I remember, so this is me again, my memory, okay, about Lurkor is that sometimes in the past, it used to be squirrel, and like he'd be playing WoW, and we'd be doing great, we're raiding, and he's moving on. I'm like, what? We haven't finished playing WoW yet? Well, I'm ready to have something else, and that's fine, okay? Guess why now he said, the roles are reversed now, You're the one who goes squirrel. You're trying all the different games all the time now. Okay, I said just sticking with one game. I go, oh, so I guess it reverses that we get older, right? Said that they always say that your kids pick up your habits. Maybe it happens the other way around too. I don't know. But Final Fantasy 14 is always a fun game. And I always criticize its music. And I went to a concert, and I realized this is really good music. It really is. I mean, and people get a lot of credit for it. And that's the thing about Final Fantasy, both the writing, Square Enix, and every time you hear people talk about this game, it isn't just the game itself, it's what's behind it. Like say the writing, the music, maybe the voice acting, but also just the way that Square Enix, listens to their community. And so, yeah, that's pretty good.
It's really become a force in the MMO world, kind of just in general. There is like on Twitch yesterday, there was 100,000 people watching that announcement showcase, and you can see its influences on even like World of Warcraft, where World of Warcraft kind of adopted that same sort of like main story quest sort of like formula going into like I really felt it in BFA, where they had you like doing stuff like that, and so I mean it's very interesting to see like what it's like the impact that it's had on MMOs in general.
Yeah.
Check out the further adventures of Kennethan by liking and subscribing and watching me live on twitch.tv/Kennethan.